This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, I'll do the poll. Jeff Joyner is absent. David Rowley is absent. Jeff Lord is absent. Craig Gelbson.
Here.
Tom Armeo.
Here.
Patricia Kennedy.
Here.
Carol Robinson. Here. Andrew Marietta.
Here.
James Stewart.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Okay, since Jeff here, I guess I'll use this time to speak a long time about what I've been feeling the last 2 years.
Oh, wait, I think I have a point.
Exactly. I'll forego his remarks and looking for approval to the minutes of last meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Cheryl.
I'll second.
Thank you, Jim, Senator. Report and audit. Want to move over a chair? Do this one?
Yeah, if you could.
The
I
minutes
sent the minutes.
from the audit meeting,
Yep.
approval.
No, we don't have to approve them. You
Okay.
can just let them stand as a report to the committee.
Chairman's remarks.
Bills and communication.
Yeah, no, I know, but I do get remarks on there.
You skipped them.
As chair of the finance committee, I get remarks.
Okay, yeah.
I noticed you sent out an email to Megan that we were about $80,000 difference. Is that what you said? Was it 60,000? We're short compared to last year.
Oh, yes.
And what was that reason? I just want to know, what was it again? What was the reason? Was there a particular reason? You didn't give one, did you? I don't remember you giving one.
I think the,
Not to put you on the spot, I just,
It's gonna be, I'm guessing it's gonna be around your revenue structures with your pilot agreements from last year and what we had versus this year.
do you remember seeing that email? Yeah,
Yeah,
I understand that we're going down. I just was curious.
there wasn't any expenses
Right.
that have really gone out of control.
Kind of what I was asking.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we certainly can make that up. I can next month bill the county for their 70,000.
Was that part of it? Yeah.
Okay, that could be a timing thing in terms of, do you remember when we got the reimbursement from them last year?
This one.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, I know how it all works. I was just wondering what that was.
From the last meeting, I thought it was income from, we don't have things in the works.
Right.
But we have pilots.
Comparably to last year.
Could be the year before.
Thank you, that's what I'm thinking. Okay. Approval for expenses, or any questions, right? Expenses and checks?
Yeah, most of that is normal. There is the annual meeting reception. They did move it back to May this year. That'll be in Cooperstown at the Hall of Fame for the New York State EDC annual meeting that we usually cover once a year.
Yeah.
They did it in October of last year. That's why it's so close. And then the tree removal, which I told you guys about last time, I'm paying him. And then on the deposit side, we did get a pilot application fee from Hickey Golf. I guess the board will talk about that in a little while. There's a resolution in there on that, and then just some rent payments, and that's it.
Any questions? Approval? Motion to.
So moved.
You found
Second.
Thanks, Cheryl.
All in favor? Approved. You've approved these Paris agreements. Anything else? Is that it?
Report of the fund.
Yeah, I will let the meeting minutes stand as the report. Just to know, Jody and I have met and we're just getting some clarity on the two main project charters. So those will be revised for our next project committee meeting.
Now we'll do the Paris report.
Say it again.
Now we'll do the Paris report.
Need approval? Paris report?
There's 3, yeah. So there's the annual report that I sent out. It's got 30 pages. The procurement report for the IDA and the investment report for the IDA that Jody will submit to Paris once the board approves them.
Was there any abnormalities or anything that you wanted to point out in any of those reports?
Well, one of the problems with this is that we still don't have the audit done. And we really can't submit the certified audit or our financial reports. So We certainly can submit the other three, which are the ones that we have right now.
Right.
But there's really nothing outstanding in any of them. It's basically, our preliminary report is always the same. Basically, anything that we spend $5,000 or more, we have to report to the procurement. So it's somewhat an easy report to do. The investment report is again, just really a formality in the sense that we have investment policies. The annual report is a little bit more difficult to do, mainly because you've got to report on all your pilot payments. And so you have to report on how much money would have been paid if there was no pilot, how much money was paid by the pilot, and whether they actually paid that. That takes about the longest time to put together. But I'm fairly confident that all the numbers are accurate.
I'm assuming it was on the finance report that we had to correct, was it last year? Because I thought I saw some numbers on the annual report around the financing the loans and the drawback or the payback and we had the whole big correction
The
last
bond
year.
issue.
The
Yeah, bond
That's
issue,
on
okay. That's on the,
capital
okay.
Yep.
Okay, gotcha, okay.
Yeah, and we can quickly talk about that. What I did was I ran a sheet showing how much was retired in debt and what the outstanding balances are. And it ties to what it should be.
Okay,
Um,
so we feel all squared away with that and all.
Well,
Contract.
I've got to reach out to our audit firm because they don't report to us Springbrooks bonds. One is for $500,000 and the other is for 4.45. And the reason is that she doesn't list them because Springbrook hasn't drawn down any of that money yet. So, but the Paris system says, but you authorized a bond for that.
You set it up.
So you've got to show that. So our numbers tie with what Paris is showing, but it won't tie to our audit by roughly $4.95 million. So I'm in the process of working it with Mary.
You know, I'm still getting up to speed on some of the mechanics here. This Paris report, is that the format that we report to the public authorities?
Yes.
Board, okay.
And usually every year they'll have questions on some of our numbers that we put in. And we'll have to make some minor adjustments, but there's nothing major. And I certainly don't expect anything on the Capital Resource Corporation this year. I was specifically looking at that to tie the numbers together.
Are they the ones that had the question that we had too much cash? Was that last year or the year before?
It was the audit, the audit that was done, they're recommending we invest, I think.
It was
Is
pretty
that what
big.
you're talking
It was
about?
a pretty big recommendation.
Yeah.
Wasn't it? They're pretty stern on that.
Yeah.
So then we put it into a high yield kind of,
Yeah.
High yield?
you know,
That's
1%.
Relative.
It's like those bargains that you can find. Used to be.
The one issue is one of our CDs. We only renewed it for 6 months because we're hoping to go into construction. We extended it another year because we're expecting that grant. We're going to request this for the spring, so we probably won't need that money until the following year. But other than that, that's the difficult thing with the audit firm is that, well, we may spend that money this year.
Mhm.
You know,
Right.
And so we don't want to make a long-term investment.
Just a discussion, just to keep people up to, that's why I asked some of these questions, just, it helps, doesn't it? There was a question on the amount of cash we had, which is very interesting.
And the other thing that Mary raised, which she asked Megan yesterday, was, do we have any lines of credit outstanding or credit?
Mhm.
We don't, because we paid off the line of credit from Community Bank from the purchase of the rail yards.
Right.
Because one of the things that the auditors, not the auditors, but the controller's office was raising during our initial 2.5-year controller's office review of us was that you have the money to
Yeah,
pay off this
pay it, yeah.
Yeah, that was it. Yep.
So we made the decision by the board to pay off.
Mhm.
But we don't have any line of credit. We do have a credit. But you.
It was 2.5 years long. Man. You could carry that. Okay. Do we need approval to the agreement?
Yeah, approval
So, need
to
a
submit
motion?
those
Yep.
reports.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstain, any noes, abstentions? So moved.
Soccer club lease.
Okay, so the projects committee kind of touched on this a little, and I sent out yesterday Kurt's explanation of the lease, which was that it is the soccer club's burden to be maintaining and to replace the pump or the whole system should there be an issue. So I actually reached out to the soccer club yesterday and I asked them, have they been maintaining the system? And you can see up here everything they've spent, but basically it kind of comes down to they spent a little under 17,000 between 2018 and 2021 on repairs and maintenance of the water irrigation system. They have an estimate of about $1,000 for 2022's operation maintenance of the system. So me and Jody were talking about this morning, and I went back to their original email, and I didn't know if maybe do they want us to take over all of these expenses, or do they want us to replace the whole system should something happen? So I went back to his original email, and he said amend to the contract to include possible repairs to the field water maintenance system. So I'm kind of reading that like they want us to take over everything on the water system.
Yeah.
Oh, so I mean, I'm not getting that. I guess my read of that was they would continue with maintenance and we would take over if there were a catastrophic failure essentially.
But a
with the
short
water
call,
system,
replace.
and we would replace it, yeah.
We've done that in the past, but
But if you remember though, the last lease agreement, when we negotiated it, we specifically defined the things that if they were responsible for essentially repairs, we made them responsible for it entirely, so to speak, to avoid some of the confusion. So we still own the buildings, but they're responsible for the maintenance and repairs of bleachers, all that kind of stuff.
So what we suggested, Megan and I talked about this morning, is to actually have representatives of the soccer club come to the projects committee. and
Great
make their
idea.
case. Because my feeling on it is that we wouldn't even care about the irrigation system if it wasn't being used for soccer. And it's really, the only reason that system is there is for the soccer clubs. It's not like we should incorporate that as one of our responsibilities.
I mean, I could see it a couple ways, to be honest with you. I mean, I think as a board, we all agreed, and this was prior to you, Jody, is that we wanted to continue seeing them use the soccer fields. So for us, it was trying to create a relatively favorable agreement that allowed that to still be maintained for the community. That being said, right, they've taken over a lot of the maintenance and repairs to maintain them as soccer fields. But I think in the end, the bottom line as a board, what we said previously, we probably need to discuss that again, is we want to see them ongoing as soccer fields. So if the water irrigation system were to fail, I think as a board, we might still consider replacing that, even if it at least didn't exist with the soccer club. That's some history for anyone. Feel free to jump in on that, but.
and she's correct. And it was costing us to do nothing with those fields, $80,000 to $90,000 a year in this office to do nothing. They were not being used, just to maintain them so they could potentially be used at one point.
And how we ended up with them was almost
Well, you were part of it, right?
we keeping it functioning as a soccer was not condition of the sale, but understood that was desirable to the community, and we're part of the community. So to me, there's certain things we do that have to balance out 100%, and so other things that don't. And I think, keeping the soccer field functional, they can do maintenance. If the pump went bad, the system went bad, and it was a major repair, obviously they can't, they can't pay for it. So it's our, as long as they're using
I guess that's my
soccer-
bottom line, is if they weren't able to pay for it, it would cause them to default or essentially have to leave the fields. We're stuck now with fields without an irrigation. Like, we're gonna have to eventually pick up the tab anyways.
Right.
So I guess my counter to you might be to consider, can we put something in there that ensures maintenance, right? So whether we have an annual check that they pay for, or that we get reports annually of the maintenance that they have done on the system to ensure that it's being kept up to
Correct.
where it needs to be, then I would feel more comfortable taking on if there were a catastrophic failure to the system. us owning that as a
And if they're
landowner.
telling you that it's just getting old and parts are not replaceable, then have some sort of plan of monies per year or per 3 years that we're going to do this field, and this field, so we're not just,
Correct.
here it is. Because my understanding of the community is it's getting to that point where it's not. gonna
And
be
maybe
able
that's
to-
the first step, is we should do an assessment of the system. We should have it reviewed and assessed and
Now, if
understood.
some, entrepreneur wants to buy it and turn it into a generating facility, we'd be real receptive to it
At soccer.
before it all fails.
Yeah. I don't know if that throws you in a different direction, Jody, than where you were.
I guess I feel a moral obligation to the community to make sure that it's functional.
Yes.
You as well.
Yeah.
On behalf of the IDA.
Yes.
Well, I'm working on a different capital budget issue, and that's that. I had a meeting yesterday with the town of Oneonta and the city of Oneonta. And right now, we own House Road, we own Stadium Circle Drive. We own apparently all of the roads in the Oneonta Business Park. They were never deeded over to the town or the city. So no maintenance is being done. Now,
Who does snow plowing?
the town does it on our behalf of those two roads in the town. And then it's more of a courtesy, they never really billed us. My discussions was that on the road that runs down to the soccer field as well as Oxus, that they suggested I make a pitch to the town board for them to just take it over. Because they realize that we have a limited amount of money that we can't afford to really repave all these roads. And they would be willing, in theory, to at least set that road and maintain it and reconstruct it. But we also own, for example, Oxus, that roof leaks. That could be a $300,000 repair job.
Easily.
I don't mean to interrupt you, I'm sorry. I would talk to Jeff about, because we've had this discussion over and over in the past. Jeff Lord, there's, I don't know what was written or not written, but there was some agreement with them maintaining. And it's been going back and forth. Before you, there was a conversation and they had found stuff that it was 30 years ago that they were maintaining that road and they haven't passed. That road's not.
So you're talking about road maintenance. Is that even a road down there on Axis? Like to me, it's like a long driveway.
I'm talking about the other one.
In the soccer field,
Business for the business.
Business
park.
park.
the division start, yes, that would make, well, I would. I'm
Just
surprised.
they have been maintaining.
They've been maintaining it, but they claim that the county owns it. Now, if you talk to Rich Bremer at the county, he's gonna say we don't.
We go to approvals to the town.
So I've got to do some more research on whether that was ever deeded to anybody, or whether it's just an informal agreement that they're just.
And it could be, but I think Jeff was.
But the one in front of Bioxis, they won't even pave the potholes. And that's becoming a big mess. I'm just saying that there's a lot of capital work that we have to do on our whole infrastructure, and we've got to figure out a plan. Like you said, we put so much money aside for this type of project.
Yeah, this is what we're talking, in terms of property manager, we need somebody that's staying on top of it, and or our lease agreements are aligned to ensure maintenance is taking place appropriately and we're checking in on it annually or whatever the term length should be.
And you
on.
can't expect, just the soccer club and any little league, I don't care what club, these are volunteer people.
Yeah.
We would have to direct with not this deep negotiation to help them through what the needs are, what we could do, because they're just volunteers. And so to come and present and have, not that they shouldn't come and have the conversation, but to have some presentation, I wouldn't expect a lot.
Well, I would say to have a conversation to come to a clear agreement on who's doing what, what's maintenance and what's repair. That's the conversation I would prefer to have.
Sure.
So we understood going in, but the big picture concept to me is they have no resources, so, and it's good for the community, it's good for the kids, and we want,
100%.
for us, positioning for our brand as the IDA, we want to help with that.
Yes.
If we don't go pick fights and, kick dirt on the little kids, that just doesn't go well on the front page of the paper, so.
I guess for me, I'm not sure a conversation with 12 people at the
No.
table is gonna be
No.
effective, right? I
Not,
think-
no.
No, right.
It's hard for people.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
yeah, I think,
No.
yeah.
We don't want a room full of soccer.
Yes,
I just think that we have.
no, but even with that, I mean, even
Right.
5 of us, I mean.
I don't
it's-
think we need, I
unruly.
think you
I
need,
think-
I'm just saying that I think you need to have a little more direction in this meeting, whatever,
Yes,
by you kind of directing it rather than expecting to, what do you need? Because it just will take, you know.
Stay in the circle and the pony farm, clarity on who owns what,
Important,
we've got to get there in a hurry.
yes.
on the roads,
Right.
yeah,
And even the road into the soccer, you know, if the town will take that over, I mean, that gate's closed in the snow out all winter, so I'm not sure who's gonna own that, but the maintenance on that's gotta happen too. So if there's a way that, I mean, I don't know, I'm sure where the town would.
I just got paid, I think we might have paid for that paving. You can look that up.
I feel like it was a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I think if we have a conversation with the soccer club, that I think it is important to say, you know, in terms of they're gonna do the maintenance, but good maintenance will postpone the day when it has to be replaced.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, as long as we, you know, we sort that out.
Mhm.
But I'm for, you know, keeping them in business down there because, you know, on any, you know, events and Saturday mornings and all that, I mean, it draws people in while they're out and about, they're spending money. I mean, it's good for the whole community.
Well, the other thing is, in the umbrella of the IDA, one of the things that comes up with people moving to town is the options of things to do here.
Yeah,
It's
Yeah.
You
number
know,
one.
having that completely functional adds one more
Quality of life,
healthy,
yeah.
quality life thing that people can do here.
It's number one.
I also agree with Cheryl's idea is that we should talk to the soccer club and see if they would be comfortable about having us actually have somebody go in and do an evaluation of the system.
yeah,
And we might consider having that if it can last another 30 years.
Mm.
If it's that cost might come in, it will save us in the long run, a couple thousand a year instead of we need.
Yeah, it could be, it
45,000.
becomes, if they're bubble gumming it together and keeping it working as
Correct,
opposed
save
to
no
once a
money.
year,
Correct,
come in and do a tune-up and then you run it for the season.
correct.
Money well spent, you know.
Right.
Money well spent.
and I'm surprised they spent as much as they have.
I was too.
That's
Yeah,
pretty substantial.
And I think it's a lot of, from my understanding, I think it's a lot of waiting, and then they, you know, hoping it doesn't go.
Yeah.
Right,
And now it's bang, we got a $5,000 bill.
right, right.
We want, I think.
And on the roads, you know, I think that is a good strategy to, as many of those roads as we can, you know, get rid of.
Yeah.
I was gonna come up with another word, but that's what I mean.
Offload, is that
Right,
right?
right. But the better. In your meeting and discussion with the town and city, was there any receptivity there at all? I mean, are they open at all? I know when you turn over a private road to a municipality, it has to meet certain specs and so on.
That's a concern on Roundhouse Road. The town didn't raise a concern on Circle Drive. However, I did point out to the city, because the town has a very small portion, like
The brown house.
on Roundhouse. I did point out to the city, well, if we sell that, they put up a fence. What's that? Is the city gonna be okay with that? Or if I go next week and put a fence on there and say you can't drive on it?
Yeah.
And that opened up, well, yeah, maybe we can do something, maybe.
I think the town will help you. I don't know what the city, town will.
If the negotiations go well, let me know. I got a road I want to negotiate too.
It's still on that.
Oh, yeah.
It was a good meeting, essentially, we paid for the
The water.
we paid for a water crossing to the river. And the city administrator agreed that they should be paying us reimbursements for those costs. Because it's actually their system, it's not ours. So we're trying to work out an agreement that they pay us for. So we're starting to look at, it was,
I think it would be really great to honestly have kind of a portfolio of our properties and understanding, right? Each of the intricacies of each of the properties, what do we own, what do we lease? I think could be good to understand that portfolio, honestly, like,
Well,
right?
In a regard to that as well, with that portfolio is to have an annual assessment of the property before your budget process. So you can look at it and say what are projected expenditures or needs and causes for concern. But I think memorializing that on an annual basis prior to budget would kind of keep it front and center instead of kind of reacting when leases are up or issues come up.
Yeah, I mean, you even might want to do like an annual kind of just maintenance review of buildings,
Yep.
right?
And laying your eyes on, review the property, laying your eyes, what are potential issues, what are current issues, what do we want to do? It's protecting your investment as a
Yeah.
person who leases things. And I do it before budget again, so you could incorporate the costs.
So one more thing for the plate, guys. Yeah.
Well, you do it for your own properties, right? You would,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
you wouldn't say, oh, well,
Right.
I think it's our responsibility to.
Like we showed one of our properties in the Only Island Business Park. I think it was this week. There's so much going on.
Yeah.
The city administrator said, well, we have some equipment on that lot that we installed, and I'm like, when did that?
Right.
Like 7 years ago or something. And it's like, well, we've got to come to an agreement that we cut that piece out or you buy it or something, because they have a water pump system. It's like, similarly, on that one piece of property, the county has a bus pad for passengers that apparently was negotiated 5-7 years ago, but there was never a reported lease or anything. So I've already talked to the county about, we may have to relocate it somewhere else and actually have a formal lease for you guys to entertain a bus garage or bus shelter there.
It sounds like we have some organizing to do on our
It
property.
does, yeah.
Well, really, the last few years, we've kind of got the audit done and, the fires have got burned down. We can get,
Yeah,
taken
we can
control.
do, yeah.
We can manage what we're kind of crisis to crisis. And
Yeah.
hopefully now we can get our arms around what we're doing.
So we know where we're going with the soccer club. We're good. Go ahead.
Okay, the next one is, we did receive a formal application from Vicky regarding to softball. And there is a resolution here to hold, schedule a public hearing, and I'll let Joe discuss that.
Thank you, Jody. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Yeah, the resolution for consideration by the board is the initial resolution that we consider in connection with entertaining a project, basically accepting the application and authorizing the staff and council to schedule a public hearing. There's no final action being taken. This is the preliminary step to solicit public comment, frankly, get the file in order, report back to you on a cost-benefit analysis, the public comments, and further detail with respect to the project. So this is a very preliminary step. And again, it's the one that we follow on all of the straight lease transactions that we handle for the IDA.
Has he submitted enough detail that would to be available at a public hearing?
Yes. He's done a very decent job at actually, he's done quite a bit of work. He's got real revised cost estimates. We've gone out to bid on some things to get solicited to firm up his cost numbers. Probably one of the more important things, that the only thing that was being held up was we hadn't had the Hardwick assessor really assess the property and reassess the property at what it would be. I did talk to the city assessor, and it's currently, the assessment on the property is $1.175 million. And he's looking at raising the assessment to $2.857 million. So we were able to run a calculation and determine the fact that there would be benefits to him if the IDA were to approve a sales tax and a real property tax exemption. So that was the missing piece of the application. Everything else is completed. We incorporated that information into his application. So
You said a city assessor, you meant the town of Hardwick?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the town assessor apologized for not getting back to us sooner. He's just in tax season. And
Yeah.
so he really went out of his way to make these advice for us.
Any more questions? Motion?
Let's do a formal vote.
Yeah, I'll move the passage of the resolution.
Thank you, Jane.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Roll call?
I'll do a roll. Jeff Joyner is absent. Dave Rowley is absent. Jeff Lord is absent. Craig Gelbman,
Yes.
Tom Armayo,
Yes.
Patricia Kennedy.
Yep.
Andrew Marietta,
Yes.
Cheryl Robinson,
Yes.
James Stewart.
Yes.
Now, related to this, we are going to be probably hiring the MRD group to do a cost benefit analysis. We used to use DEG.
CGR.
And their fee was annual fee was about $3,500. Analysis for projects that we do. MRD, they've since with this January 1st, they ceased providing that service. So the MRD group came out and says we can do the same thing. They're only going to charge $1,000, so it was actually less than what we were paying last year.
Like a bargain.
Great.
Any time frame when you might schedule a public hearing?
We have to do a notice, so then 10 days after the notice, so it really depends on the Daily Star and when they get it in. And then when we find that out, we usually set the date 10 days after that.
Yeah, where would that be held? Not that I was gonna show up, but
Somewhere in the town.
it has to be in the town park.
And further, and this is
I move to have Jim show up.
And sorry, further, we actually send a copy of the notice to each of the affected taxing jurisdictions. So not only is it published in the newspaper, it's held in the town where the project's located, but each of the affected taxing jurisdictions, the county, the town, and the school district, get a letter from us with a copy of the notice.
So the nice thing also about this is that we're using our standard pilot. It's in our, so not requesting any
Creating their
years.
sections. That's what we like to hear.
That's it with that one.
On to the next one.
We do have a resolution authorizing the submission of the USDA grant application and a commitment to cost share. Now, we estimated that we probably would request 1.625 million. And our cost share would be about 325,000. That we weren't going to be asking for the full amount of the grant. I had a meeting yesterday with Phoebe from CAID, and she would like to partner with us on this grant. And they are requesting $100,000 in the grant, which they would come up with $25,000. So it's getting close to the deadline. I think the deadline is April 17th, but I told her I would bring it up. What they basically want to do is hire additional staff over a 4-year period to help with their proposed innovation acceleration center for farm related businesses.
So you're gonna hire extra staff and cover 4 years worth with $100,000.
I just got
Doesn't seem like highly skilled labor.
I just got the report last night.
I'm not against partnering with them, but it doesn't.
I know, it doesn't make sense to me either. They're requesting $77,000 in salaries, $30,000 in fringe, and about $3,000 in travel, and a laptop for another $1,700. It appears that it's a part-time person, or that they're going to be using, because in year one, the salaries are about 14,000, that go up to roughly 17,000. So it's not really it must be an existing person that's going to be charged.
If
Some of it have additional, yeah.
Does it help us? Is it net neutral? Does it hurt us as?
Originally, when we worked on putting this thing together, it was really just going to be Ionis's custom electronics, Hardwick in our office. We then reached out to 3 other organizations. One was the Small Business Development Center. They've agreed that they would partner with us on this and sign it. We have to have a memorandum agreement signed. CAID doesn't want to really sign that agreement unless they can get something out of it. But it would help us if they were included in it, but I don't think it's a break. It's not going to break us.
Help the scoring of the application.
I don't think it's going to really matter. The one that we wanted to get, because we do have our, which is SUNY Oneana, they can't meet with me until sometime in early May. I'm like, well, fine. Then
It's not good to know the new president that really interested and he wants to get right on board. If you can wait 60 days.
So we're probably not going to see this thing. We'll probably, I'll talk to Allison, who's working on the grant application for us. My suggestion is that we put them in as we're working with them.
Is it possible that there's some existing conduits that we could use maybe to get the ear of the president to see if we could interrupt his busy schedule just for a 45-minute
Do you
conversation?
need the president?
I've done it 3 times, yes.
I mean, it seems if the county IDA is, trying to do something and they're interested, I mean, to find a window to have a conversation, doesn't seem like you'd have to wait.
I'll email him after this meeting and suggest that
I would find that really unacceptable.
in the morning.
Yeah, 'cause
I might make a suggestion to reach out to Danielle, his executive assistant, who is kind of monitoring all his projects. I think I have a meeting with her tomorrow where I can mention that, but she's been very accessible.
That would
And
help.
she's kind of guiding his, schedule, et cetera.
Do you
So-
have her contact information?
is that, who told you he wasn't available till May? Is it?
I think it was Danielle.
Yeah, as I recall, he has a background in these.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he was quite out the truck, he was out.
Yeah, yeah.
And we thought, these we could have a great partner here.
Yeah,
Yes,
don't be frustrated.
Yeah.
Start out with it.
that'd be great, Patricia. Perfect.
Yeah,
Mhm.
let's try to track through and try at least have a brief conversation.
I will reach out to the president.
On the CAID involvement here,
We're gonna wait till Patricia, right? Patricia, before you read. Patricia, gonna make the connection first.
All right, I'll wait till next week.
All right, is Jody waiting? He was gonna reach out to the president. Is he waiting for you?
I'm not sure. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. You're talking to me?
Yeah.
You talking to me?
Who's talking to who? Who's on first base? I'm looking at my calendar. I can mention it. I will send a email to the president and copy Danielle and bring it up in our conversation. We're talking about other things, but certainly bring it up in the conversation in the email as well. If that would be helpful. So I will email the president and copy Danielle, and I'll bring it up at our meeting.
All right, so then Monday you can,
And what are we asking the president to do in this meeting? So we want to have a meeting to discuss a grant application that's due when?
April 17th.
Okay, a grant application that's due April 17th, and can you give me a 1-paragraph thing that I could include in that would give him a kind of mindset for it?
That we drafted, that'll spell out exactly what we were asking
Yep.
about.
If you do that and include that in, then that will, have some understanding of what the project is and the fact that the timeliness is important. And do we want them to just kind of be, a signature on this? Do we want active involvement in the grant development? Or we just want to say they're a partner?
It's basically that they would recommend interns to us to work with these startup businesses and possibly provide some technical support from their school of business.
basically an active support once we have the Acceleration Innovation Center
Yeah.
underway.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay, if
partner.
you can just bullet that and send that to me, I'll have that for conversation and for an email.
Okay, I'll have that to you today.
Okay, great.
On the CADE involvement, are they looking to actually be like housed in the eventual site? I mean, together, or?
Yes, they're kind of looking at this gigantic, huge global picture of what Cable wants to do as far as an innovation center. Ultimately, they would like to own a farm and build their own
That's not
innovation center.
downtown, I mean,
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Well,
I know that seems pretty.
is their agenda compatible with what we're trying to do here with our agenda, which is more geared toward electronic innovation center, acceleration center based on custom electronics, Ioxis, they're coming with ag thing, and, they both might be acceleration centers, but is it really compatible, as you try to launch the thing? I would question it. I'm sure there's some things that carry over, but ag and electronics are a little bit different.
There was one example, there was a company from Yugoslavia that developed a tractor, that this tractor had sensors on it that could determine what was wheat and what was a wheat. And they would pull out the wheat, and they were looking for a partner in the United States to help manufacture this. And we referred them to actually Custom Electronics, who said if we can get the specifications on this, they think they could actually help that company with their manufacturing, because they would do all the electronics. That project never materialized, but that's an example of where you could have agriculture and electronics working together in a sense.
Right, but I feel like that's, I mean, it's not really ag work, it's kind of any sector working with electronics to advance their own industry, right? Like, I mean, I don't really see that as an ag innovation center, I see that as ag needing technology and electronics to advance their, maybe I'm looking at that wrong. but
I
don't.
agree with you. I
Okay.
think, let me say, if you're everything, you're nothing. So the focus of the acceleration center as it currently exists, as I understand it, is electronic manufacturing, capacitors and things like that. And if you get too broad, getting broad enough to get track, volume, but get too broad, if you're everything, you're nothing. So if this is targeted acceleration center toward that which is manufacturing, we can do here, I'm assuming not highly energy intensive. So we can do something here. We get too focused on too many things, we don't get anything done. And I'm just questioning whether CADE fits in this.
So the question, we can still move this forward. The question.
I was gonna say, can we
can still move
separate
this forward,
the two?
and then you need to know today on Kate. Are you sure? Because you can't, because you said April 17th.
It's 17th is when the application is to be submitted. The whole thing is that this is our component. So we're going to show that we have the resources to match what we want. If CADE, if somehow they can convince us, and I have the same reservations, they have to do their own resolution. They have to do their own cost sharing. It could be included in the application, but
So I think you need to make a recommendation to the board that whether you want it or you don't want it. I think
New information.
Back to your-
I'm not just moving in a spot, give me new information, I can change my position. What I'm understanding currently, that's what I would see. I don't see it.
And obviously, my opinion is, let's start where we have, I mean, we don't have a plan yet, we don't have a building
Right.
yet, without knowing that stuff, let's move forward with, in my opinion, getting this grant and then starting to be able to put that plan together. If at that point in time, we then see there's opportunity for another sector or another industry to house a different floor, let's say, right?
Right.
Then we can go and understand that Kate was already
Yeah, I
here at the
agree.
table
I
with that.
I agree with that.
Okay.
so. I need a motion to move this forward.
Can I
This should
just ask a question? Who's writing the application? I'm sorry for that.
It's being written by a woman who works at the MRB group, Allison.
Okay, so we've contracted with her.
Yes.
And are we the principal? Are we the principal grant?
Yes. And originally, we weren't planning on sharing any of the money with anybody. To be honest, what they sent me yesterday.
We're not sharing. We have ours, and we're just adding on
Right.
their portion. Okay.
And while they gave me a budget, it supposedly is a budget with an explanation as to what these things people will be doing, and there's no explanation. It's just a straight budget. It's like well, what are these people gonna do?
Okay, so we
Yeah, I
can't,
think- I
okay,
think
so
both.
let's just focus on this and you have to do some more work. I need a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Tom.
What's the motion? I'm sorry, I've lost track of what the motion is.
For the resolution for the
USDA grant.
USDA grant applications, it should be,
Submitting the grant application and commitment to cost share, 325,000.
So I want, my one comment here is,
um,
Yeah. got it.
discussion.
Motion's on the table.
I saw you too, Jim. You were-
So I'm very comfortable with moving ahead with the grant application. Again, I just want to state that before we move further with actually any expenditure of money, I want to make sure we have a plan and we understand exactly what we are looking to accomplish and how we commit our partners to that plan. I still have that concern or fear that if you're relying on the goodness of the partners' hearts to volunteer their time, their services, their resources, at any moment that could disappear. And so how do we make sure we have kind of the partners have a stake in it
So,
and have a guaranteed commitment?
I agree with you
I agree.
100%. We need to have written agreements and there need to be a financial commitment.
So we have to move the motion to say we'll approve this moving forward with the exception of, do you want to amend the
Well,
resolution?
as part of the application, we have to have a sign that grant. All
I-
parties.
Hold on a second, Patricia. So, do we have to amend this to get what you want inside that this motion? Does that, you understand? So you don't want us to move forward without you seeing.
I think the grant application should move forward, so I'm okay
Okay.
with that.
Yeah.
It's a question of implementing.
Exactly.
That's fine, that's fine. Okay, go ahead,
If
Jim.
you're enough to receive the grant, you can always turn it down.
Correct.
Thank you. Jim, you had a question?
I'm just wondering if it says we authorize to direct to submit the grant application. I'm uncomfortable directing to submit a grant application that we haven't seen in our commitments. So I would wonder if we could make this resolution upon seeing the grant application and have it laid out for us rather than blindly saying submit something with so many variables out there.
Correct, and that's why I said, do we want to adjust this motion to do that?
Or make
just-
the resolution at a different time.
Well,
The
so
resolution doesn't stop you from writing the grant. I assume you have to make the resolution prior to submitting the grant. I
So
don't
as
know,
back
Joe.
up,
You're right.
do you want the full grant? Because we did get a full write-up on the Acceleration Center plan.
Right. It was dated February 2022.
Right.
I
Which outlined
understand that, but what is in the grant application? Are we going to be committing to that cost share in that grant application?
Yes.
So I would be uncomfortable committing to that cost share without seeing the application.
We send them.
You don't know it won't pass anyway, so that's my.
Because I think that would be my hesitation. And unless there's something about the timing, why wouldn't we wait until it was more formulated?
Because the application has to be submitted before our next board meeting.
So the 17th,
Yes.
and our next board meeting is when?
It would be after that.
And I guess I'm trying to understand, like, we haven't ever reviewed grant applications before.
April 28th is our next board meeting, and I guess if you have a quorum, you could approve it at the projects committee meeting. That would be on the 14th, but that only leaves you 2 days. I guess that doesn't matter if you have the application.
I guess I don't understand the cost sharing in our commitment. There's so many variables of who our partners are. That's my only hesitation.
That is spelled out in that document we received a couple weeks ago. So that's what I'm trying to understand, what the grant application is, what you're looking at a grant, because we've never reviewed grant application.
Well, I understand that. Well, maybe I'm not fully understanding the project, and that's my concern. So our commitment to cost share 325,000, everybody is on board with that and understands how that will be done and used, and we're all comfortable with that?
I'll just say again, from my perspective, that's the requirement to get the grant. And what is the grant total
If we're awarded.
if we're awarded the grant, and what's the grant total dollars? sorry, I don't have that right up.
1.6.
Of 1.6 million, basically, we would have to put in the 325. So again, my hesitation isn't so much on submitting the grant as I expressed. For me, it's then the implementation before we spend any of that money or accept the grant, that we have a full plan in place in terms of partners, their commitment level, and then understanding again, what building we're buying and or leasing and or building. And we understand all additional commitments that might need to go into place. That's just my perspective. And maybe Megan, it's worth resending.
And does that have to be done before the application goes in, all the things that you've said?
No.
It does
No.
not. Okay.
No, in fact, that 325, if we were to buy a building that say was valued at $1.8 million,
Right.
That-
Okay.
take you time to figure out how you're gonna come up with your cost share. So that if you went to the bank and said, listen, I want to mortgage this building that's $1.8 million, but I only want to borrow 325,
Yeah.
that may be a better way of doing the cost share, as opposed to coming up with cash ourselves. Those details haven't been quite worked out. We're still waiting on appraisal.
So do you feel like there's anything in the grant application that would not be clearly explained in that document that was sent out a couple weeks? Maybe it's just worth resending that document by itself to the board to review the plan, the high level plan of.
But in the end,
the center.
that's fine. But to move forward with this, we move forward with this. Other than that, if we're not, we're either not putting it in or we're having a special meeting. So whether there's criteria in the motion to let him move forward on certain criteria, we're just moving just strictly on this, which Patricia at this point seems a little uncomfortable with, which is fine. But with her no, if she votes no, we can't move forward. I think we wouldn't pass, I would think, because of all of those.
If Patricia voted no, you still have Andrew, and the four of you, that's 5. 5 is a quorum, so.
But there's all the rest of them are no's, so that ends up to what? That I don't think would pass that.
We have 9 board members, so 5 is the majority. So if the 5 of you, and the 4 of you, I'm sorry, and Andrew voted yes, and Patricia voted no, it would still pass.
Well, you need 5 yes votes. You need
Right,
5 yes
that's what-
votes.
Okay.
But let me just, and I'm sorry, I haven't been involved in this.
Go ahead, Joe. Good. Go ahead.
Could I jump in for a second? And again, I apologize. I'm speaking without actually seeing the materials or talking to Jody in detail about this. Applying for the grant and winning the grant doesn't commit you to actually undertaking the project. So I think you still have time once you receive the grant to make sure that all the board members are comfortable with what the various responsibilities are of the various parties, including the IDA.
Thank you.
Does that make you feel better, Patricia?
From my own perspective, I don't feel like I understand the project. And based on our conversation, it seems like there's a lot of variables are out there. And I really don't want to review the grant application, but I think with bringing up CAID, first time I've heard about, agricultural, we don't have, the SUNY president involved in it. So that's my concern. That's my concern. I don't feel like I have a good understanding of what that grant application is going to be based on that. And it's not so much Cheryl seeing that whole thing, but it seems like the plan is fluid at this point. So that's.
Yeah, and I think that's why I asked in the last project committee for that more detailed kind of what's the vision right now. So I do think that document might help Patricia with that. It's a 2 or 3.
And I think you're right.
document.
The document said that, but the partners aren't in there. We don't have all the partners for this resolution. We just found that out.
Well, CAID is a new, that's.
New, and then the SUNY was in there, and it's not partnered. So we're
Right,
moving
correct.
We're just finding some of the details as we're in a moving this. So I understand what you're saying, Patricia. Would have been nice to know this prior to.
But even SUNY Uniana was a new partner last time we spoke. That
Right,
was because of the new president. We had Hartwick was the original partner.
I understand, but we're hearing. So we have a motion on the table.
Yeah. Tom?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
no, I just had one follow. How are we handling CAID? It was just Was that, have we resolved that? Are you gonna have further discussions with them?
I'll have further discussions with them, but right now, I don't think we're gonna.
I just, at some point, he's got to make a decision, or then we'll just go ahead.
No, yeah.
Right, Rick?
No,
Jody has to make a recommendation on that side and live with it.
I told her yesterday when we met that there are other grant opportunities out there for what she's trying to do. I mean, she can actually submit her own application. It doesn't have to be partnered with us. And to be honest, I don't think $100,000, the way she spread it out in her spreadsheet, is gonna have any big impact. So I'll talk to her later.
Like I said, when we started, is it going to have an impact? Which way? No way. That's how we started.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna have an impact.
There's a question of whether we want to extend ourselves for CADE, be a vehicle for them to at least start a process. I think when we get into implementation, I think there would be, I don't envision them, because I think an accelerator for them, I think having a farm or at least some acreage or something would make more sense
Right.
than being part of ours, but.
And certainly, some of the things that she wanted to see, well, we can still provide to them. Basically, they were looking at this type of technology and having rooms where their farmers could interact with their producers in New York City or their buyers in New York City.
Well, I don't have a problem if it does not impact our chances for getting the grant. I don't have a problem. As a courtesy to let them piggyback, because, this accelerator concept is, you start small and then they go off on their own. That may happen to CADE even in the application. I mean, this seed money will help them move on, but so I don't have a problem as long as it doesn't negatively impact our application.
Yeah, and again, it came in so late, she sent it to me last night. I didn't have a chance to discuss it with Allison.
Yeah, I think we should
Yeah, let's do
see
it
their
together.
judgment too, yeah.
I would like to get her, because that's the reason we hired her, was that she knows these grant programs.
It may complicate the decision makers in reading the application.
Might get confused.
Yeah, complicate their, yeah. It may be confusing, but so it may.
So I will check with Allison, and see if it helps us or if it hurts us.
Yeah.
If it helps us, we'll include her. If it hurts us, we'll definitely take her out. And again, they're gonna have to come up with their own cost share. Like we do.
True, yeah.
Okay, we need a vote. All in favor?
Did we get a second on that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jim.
Yeah.
Jim did second that? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have to call a roll or?
Do you want to call a roll? Why don't we just do a roll? Yes.
Jeff Joyner is absent. Dave Rowley is absent. Jeff Lord is absent. Craig Smith.
Yes.
Tom Ar-
Yes.
Trisha Kennedy.
No,
Cheryl Robinson.
Yes.
Andrew Marietta. Drew.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yep. Jim Seward.
Yes.
Motion passes.
I don't see anybody from the public. So that is all. that happens.
Great.
So
Executive session.
No.
Perfect.
I went right to the.
CRC?
Yep.
Okay, sorry.
It's okay.
Call a roll. Jeff Joyner is absent. Dave Rowley is absent. Jeff Lord is absent. Craig Gelbman.
Here.
Tom Armayo.
Here.
Patricia Kennedy.
here,
Cheryl Robinson. Here. Andrew Marietta.
Here.
And James Stewart.
Here.
Approval of the minutes for February. Need a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Second.
Thank you, Jim.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any noes, names? Thank you. Jody, Paris report, same thing as,
Paris reports is very similar to the IDA reports. The big issue on the CRC is that it's related to the bond. We have in 2021, about $2.45 million in bonds were repaid. The outstanding balance is $136.2 million. And it ties both between the reports that we got and the Paris system from last year. So the numbers are really on time. But that's really the big thing on the Paris reports for the Capital Resource Corporation. Most of the other information is really non-existent. The investment reports, again, it says we follow policies. The procurement report, basically, we don't procure anything for the Capital Resource Corporation, so that's almost zero. It is zero. And the annual report, we do have one charge that we back charge to the IDA. Basically, $42,000 that's in our budget that is received from pilot payments that goes back to the IDA. And that's actually justified by saying it's part of our salaries that we're doing these reports. The state controller said that's legitimate to do that. So there's really nothing substantive other than the bond issues.
Okay.
need a motion?
And again, we'll come back to you when we have an audit. So we still don't have the audit.
Sure.
Right.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Second.
Thank you, Jim.
Roll call.
We didn't do it for the other one yet. It's just to submit these reports.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any noes or abstentions?
Yep.
Okay. motion passed. And we are, the executive session needed? No. Adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was long.